So, Jim, we got a lot of questions about Will Ospreay, and you've talked a little bit on the show before about Will Ospreay.
Mhm.
Here's one from Dave. What are your thoughts on Will Ospreay? I mean, I know that's pretty vague, but
Yeah.
you've seen this guy in Japan,
Mhm.
but you also saw Okada over there, you saw Omega over there, and you and I had dinner together like 7 or 8 years ago, and you were going on and on about Okada and Omega. I mean, he's sort of the next great pillar, if you will, to come over from New Japan.
Yeah.
Is there anything about his game that makes him different than Kenny Omega and Okada to you?
Well, they have a lot in common. They all seem to be, uh, you know, having the natural ability to tell a story. And the things that Osprey does is usually based in athletic logic. And anytime you can have athletic logic be the biggest impetus of your show, of your match, you got a better shot at winning. Not just winning the match, but winning the audience over, getting over. So, but Osprey's a special guy. You don't see too many guys like him come along very often. So, great hire by Tony Khan. It's great that the AEW locker room has welcomed Osprey as they have, jumping out of the box on a big pay per view match. And the match he had with Takeshita was, I thought, outstanding. I don't know what you thought about it. I thought they had a hell of a match.
Oh yeah.
But now, in all due respect to the young Japanese lad, he's our buddy's moving up a notch, replacing Takeshita with Brian Danielson. Like I said, that's got me thinking, got me talking. I just think it's going to be a tremendous outing for both those guys, and maybe more importantly, a tremendous opportunity for both of them to get over. And I think that's what you always want. You want that opportunity. If we deliver in this match, we should get over. And getting over is why we're here. We want to get over. It's not about winning, it's about getting over. And I think those guys got a chance to really elevate their games and their perception by getting over when they work in St. Louis.
Let's do one here from Dylan Leahy. Jim, when it's all said and done, what do you want people to remember your career for? Have you
Oh,
thought about
JR loved the business. It was obvious that JR's passion for pro wrestling uh, broke through all barriers. He overcame a lot to maintain a long career. It's hard to believe, Conrad, that as I sit here in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, that I'm 50 years in. 50 years in pro wrestling. I should get a you know some sort of medal. No kidding. I've been getting paid all along, so everything's cool. So yeah, it's just I'm lucky. 50 years is a blessing. And there's no way in hell I would have thought I'd have lasted 50 years when I first got started, because getting started in the pro wrestling business is very challenging. And it was even more challenging then than it is now.
Let's do a question here. Joe says, first of all, sir, you're a legend and you're well respected by us fans if you didn't know that already. But which era of wrestling did you enjoy working the most and why? And do you ever sit back and just think to yourself, damn, I'm a fucking legend? I love you, Joe. Thanks for heaping some praise on our pal Jim today. Is there your favorite era of wrestling to watch? And then we'll go back and say your favorite era of wrestling to call. But just to watch, if you and I were going to sit down and fire up some wrestling from anywhere in time, what would you want to sit down and watch?
I probably would watch a little Mid South, uh, for sure. And of course, the Attitude Era, because it's star laden. So much talent, so many Hall of Famers, so many soon to be millionaires that are still living off that money. That makes me happy, makes me proud. So I'd say the Attitude Era and some Mid South would be in my wheelhouse without question.
Here's one from Canty My Everything. What do you think Hulk Hogan's legacy will be? That's an interesting question because he has become a complicated figure in recent years. Do you have a feel for when the all the writing's done and the dust is settled, what will people remember Hulk Hogan most for, do you think?
Arguably the biggest star in the history of pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Still, legacy is not going to be erased. There's not an eraser on any Booker's pencil that's strong enough or big enough to erase Hogan's contributions. Whether you like his style or what he said in this interview, or he says brother too much or whatever, being facetious. No, he's always going to be known for that. He's Babe Ruth. He's the friggin' Babe Ruth of wrestling. And any way else you look at it, I think it's not being fair to Hogan. It's just my take.
I totally agree. Christopher McCollum says, as someone who grew up in the Central States territory, I was curious if JR had any stories about Bulldog Bob Brown or Pork Chop Cash, or just any thoughts on that specific territory, if any.
Well, they should be admired for their willingness to work for little money. They weren't making a lot of money back then. And that was a tough territory to be in. So you had to love the business and love your job to make it work for you. Bob Brown's an interesting character. Not a bad hand, a good psychologist. But he wore out his welcome. He couldn't go anywhere else. Nobody really coveted hiring Bulldog Bob Brown. Now, we brought Pork Chop into Mid-South at one point. I always liked him. Bobby Pork Chop Cash. I think his son at one time was an outstanding high school running back in the Memphis area, I think. But Chops was he's a great athlete. Cut a pretty good promo. So, but you got buried into a territory that you couldn't dig your way out of. And that's kind of what it was for those guys in Central States. The guys that came through Central States, some of them did pretty well, but based on what they learned there and then moving on. But it was a tough territory to exist in. Not a lot of money.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.